Pacific Theater, January 1943. Somewhere over the Solomon Islands, Captain James Swett grips the controls of his F4U Corsair, watching helplessly as another American fighter erupts into flames ahead of him. The pilot doesn't bail out. He doesn't have time. Swett's radio crackles with desperate voices. VMF 213 pilots are engaging Japanese Zeros, and they're losing. Not because of inferior tactics, not because of pilot error, but because their guns simply won't hit. The F4U Corsair is supposed to be America's deadliest fighter. 650 caliber machine guns, each capable of firing 800 rounds per minute. On paper, it's devastating. In reality, the bullets spray wildly, scattering across the sky like buckshot. Pilots are burning through thousands of rounds just to score a few hits. Some return to base having fired everything without downing a single enemy aircraft. Swett watches his tracers arc toward a zero. He's close enough to see the pilot's helmet. His finger squeezes the trigger. The Corsair shudders as the guns roar to life, but the bullets form a cone of fire so wide that most of them miss by yards. The Zero banks away, untouched. Another pilot goes down, then another. Back at the base on Guadalcanal, Armament Sergeant Charles McCarthy sits alone in a dimly lit maintenance tent, reviewing gun camera footage from the day's missions. He's not an officer. He's not an engineer. He's just a mechanic who loads bullets into guns. But he sees what others refuse to acknowledge. Frame by frame, McCarthy watches the tracers. They don't converge. The guns fire in parallel lines, creating a pattern of dispersed fire that gives enemy pilots room to slip through. The convergence is set at 1,000 feet, following factory specifications. But most dogfights happen at 300 feet or less. McCarthy has brought this up before. He's shown the footage to officers, to engineers, to anyone who would listen. They all say the same thing. The guns are set to factory specifications. The specifications are designed by engineers with advanced degrees. McCarthy is just a sergeant who barely finished high school. He rewinds the footage again. Another Corsair, another failed engagement. The pilot fires over 200 rounds. 3 bullets hit. The Zero escapes. McCarthy does the math in his head. If the convergence point were adjusted to 300 feet instead of 1,000, the bullets would form a concentrated point of impact exactly where most combat occurs. It's simple geometry, but suggesting it means questioning the system, questioning the engineers, questioning the entire chain of command. He hears footsteps outside. Major Gregory, Pappy. Boyington enters the tent, his flight suit still damp with sweat. He looks exhausted, defeated. McCarthy wants to speak. He wants to show Boyington the footage, explain the convergence problem, offer a solution. But he knows what will happen. He's a sergeant. Boyington is a major. The hierarchy doesn't bend for men like McCarthy. Boyington pours himself coffee, stares at the wall, then leaves without a word. McCarthy sits in silence, the projector still humming, illuminating his face with flickering images of failure. Somewhere above the Pacific, pilots are dying because bullets won't connect, and the only person who seems to understand why is a man nobody will listen to. He turns off the projector. The tent goes dark, but McCarthy's mind is already working on something dangerous, something that could save lives or end his career, maybe both. The briefing room reeks of stale cigarette smoke and frustration. Morning light cuts through the tropical humidity as VMF 213's surviving pilots gather around a wooden table covered with maps and mission reports. The numbers tell a brutal story. 12 aircraft lost in 2 weeks, 9 pilots dead, 3 missing. Major Gregory Pappy Boyington slams his fist on the table. The coffee cups rattle. These pilots aren't missing their shots. They're good. Damn good. But they're firing 500 more, 600 more, sometimes 1,000 rounds per engagement and getting maybe 3 or 4 hits. The math doesn't work. The guns don't work. Lieutenant Colonel Millington, the squadron commander, disagrees. He insists the problem is pilot technique. Too much deflection shooting, not enough lead time. The guns are set to factory specifications, engineered by the best minds at Chance Vought. If pilots can't hit targets, they need more training. Captain Swett sits in the back, silent. He knows what he saw yesterday. He put his crosshairs directly on a zero at 200 feet, fired a 3-second burst, watched his tracers spread out like a garden hose. The zero flew through the gaps between his bullets. Outside the briefing room, McCarthy leans against the maintenance tent, listening. He can hear every word through the thin walls. His hands are black with gun oil, his coveralls stained with hydraulic fluid. He's been up since 4 in the morning, loading ammunition belts, checking firing mechanisms, doing everything by the book. But the book is wrong. He's tried explaining it. 3 days ago, he approached Lieutenant Harris with the gun camera footage. Harris barely looked at it before dismissing him. 2 weeks before that, he showed his calculations to the engineering officer, a recent graduate from MIT who treated McCarthy like he was suggesting they paint the planes pink. The convergence is wrong. It's simple physics. 6 guns mounted in the wings, angled inward to meet at 1,000 feet. But dogfights don't happen at 1,000 feet. They happen close, personal, desperate. At 300 feet, those guns are still converging, creating a cone of fire 20 feet wide. A zero is only 30 feet across. Half the bullets miss automatically. McCarthy has done the math a dozen times, recalibrated the angles in his head. If he adjusted the convergence to 300 feet, the 6 streams of fire would concentrate into a point less than 5 feet across. A killing shot. Every time. But he's not an engineer. He doesn't have a degree. He loads bullets and tightens bolts and does what he's told. The briefing ends. Pilots file out, heading to their aircraft for another mission. Another chance to die because their weapons won't cooperate. McCarthy watches them go. These men barely older than boys, climbing into machines that cost more than most Americans earn in a lifetime. That afternoon, another pilot doesn't come back. Jenkins, 23 years old, from Ohio. McCarthy had talked to him that morning about his sister's wedding. Jenkins was supposed to be home for it in March. He won't make it now. McCarthy stays late in the maintenance tent, staring at technical manuals he's read so many times he's memorized them. The specifications are clear. The regulations are explicit. Modifying the gun convergence without authorization is a court-martial offense. But men are dying. The tent feels smaller tonight. Darker. McCarthy traces the convergence angles with his finger on a yellowed schematic. 300 feet. That's all it would take. 1 night of work. 1 unauthorized modification. 1 decision that could cost him everything, or save everyone. McCarthy doesn't sleep that night. He lies in his bunk, listening to the distant rumble of artillery fire from the front lines, watching shadows dance across the corrugated metal ceiling. Jenkins at the empty bunk sits 3 feet away, sheets still unmade from yesterday morning. 23 years old, dead because bullets flew too wide. By dawn, McCarthy has made his decision. Not the safe one, not the smart one, but the only one he can live with. He finds himself back in the maintenance tent before sunrise, pulling out technical drawings he's studied for weeks. The F4U Corsair schematic spreads across his workbench like a surgical diagram. 6 M2 Browning machine guns, 3 per wing, each angled inward according to precise factory specifications. Those specifications are about to change. McCarthy measures twice, then measures again. The current convergence point sits at 1,000 feet, exactly as Chance Vought engineers designed it. He needs 300 feet. The angle adjustment is small, only a few degrees per gun, but in combat, those degrees mean everything. The mathematics are straightforward. The consequences are not. Modifying military equipment without authorization violates Article 92 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Disobeying a lawful order, if the modification fails, if a gun jams, if the wing structure can't handle the stress, McCarthy will face a court-martial. Dishonorable discharge at minimum, prison at worst. But if he does nothing, more pilots die. More Jenkinses don't make it home for their sisters' weddings. McCarthy pulls out a cigarette, lights it, then crushes it out. His hands need to be steady for this. He needs help. This isn't a one-man job. Recalibrating 6 guns, adjusting mounting brackets, reinforcing wing structures, all before the next mission launch at 0800. 6 hours. Maybe 7 if he's lucky. Corporal Tommy Deaver works the night shift in the adjacent hangar. Good kid from Tennessee, capable hands, keeps his mouth shut. McCarthy finds him elbow deep in an engine, cowling. "Tommy, I need you to trust me on something. Can't explain everything. Can't tell you it's authorized. But I need your help tonight. And I need you to not ask questions." Diva looks at him for a long moment, grease-stained hands hovering over the engine. Then he nods. "What are we doing?" "Saving lives." They find Private Eddie Santos smoking behind the fuel depot. Santos is from Brooklyn, sharp with tools, sharper with calculations. McCarthy explains what he's planning. Santos, eyes go wide. "Sarge, they'll crucify you for this. Us too, probably. Probably." Santos takes a long drag from his cigarette, flicks it into the mud. "Which plane?" "Captain Swett's Corsair. Number 17. The one he's flying tomorrow." The three of them stand in the darkness, the weight of the decision settling over them like the humid Pacific air. No one speaks for a moment. Somewhere in the distance, another patrol returns, engines echoing across the airfield. McCarthy thinks about Jenkins, about the pilots who'll fly tomorrow, about the choice between following orders and doing what's right. "We start now, we finish before dawn, and we don't tell anyone, ever." Diva and Santos nod. They walk toward Hangar 3, where Captain Swett's Corsair waits in the darkness. The aircraft sits silent, unaware it's about to become either McCarthy's salvation or his execution, maybe both. The hangar door closes with a metallic groan that echoes through the darkness. McCarthy flips a single work light, casting long shadows across Captain Swett's Corsair. The aircraft looms before them, 33 feet of bent-wing fighter that's supposed to dominate the Pacific skies. Tonight, it might finally get the chance. McCarthy divides the work. Diva takes the left wing, Santos the right. McCarthy himself handles the structural reinforcements. The gun mounts weren't designed for this angle. The stress will be different. The recoil dynamics altered. If they don't compensate, the guns could tear themselves loose mid-flight. Santos climbs onto the right wing with a wrench and a flashlight clenched between his teeth. He removes the access panel, exposing the first gun mount. The adjustment mechanism is there, exactly where the technical manual says it should be. Factory set at 11 degrees. He needs 16. How much play do we have in these mounts, Sarge? Not enough. We'll need to shim them. McCarthy pulls out metal stock he's been quietly collecting for 3 weeks. Thin aluminum plates, precisely measured, cut during lunch breaks when no one was watching. Each piece represents hours of preparation for a decision he hadn't fully admitted he was going to make. Until tonight, the work is meticulous. Each gun must be angled precisely, all 6 converging at exactly 300 feet. An error of even half a degree means the pattern falls apart. McCarthy checks each angle with a level and a plumb line, measuring distances that will translate into life or death at 300 miles per hour. Diva's hands shake as he talks down the first mounting bolt. "You okay? Just thinking about what happens if this goes wrong. Then we better make sure it goes right." Hours pass. The modification is more complex than McCarthy anticipated. The wing structure needs additional bracing where the new angles create unexpected stress points. He fabricates brackets from scrap metal, welding them in place with equipment he's not technically authorized to use at this hour. Every sound makes them freeze. Footsteps outside could mean an officer. A door opening could mean discovery. But the base sleeps, and the 3 men work in focused silence, speaking only when necessary. By 0300, the left wing is finished. By 0430, the right wing is done. McCarthy performs a final inspection, checking each mount, each angle, each reinforcement. His calculations replay in his mind like a prayer. 300 feet, 16 degrees per gun, convergence 0.5 feet wide. Santos wipes sweat from his forehead despite the cool night air. How do we know it works? We don't. Not until someone fires it. They stand back, looking at their unauthorized modification. From the outside, nothing appears different. The guns sit in their mounts. The panels are secured. The aircraft looks exactly as it did 6 hours ago. But everything has changed. McCarthy runs his hand along the wing's leading edge, feeling the cool metal under his palm. Tomorrow morning, Captain Swett will climb into this cockpit. He'll take off not knowing his guns have been illegally modified by a sergeant with no engineering degree and 2 accomplices who could all face prison. If the modification fails, Careers end. If it works, maybe pilots stop dying. Dawn breaks over Guadalcanal. The three men slip out of the hangar separately, returning to their bunks as the base begins to wake. McCarthy doesn't sleep. He lies in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the inevitable moment when Captain Swett discovers what's been done to his aircraft. That moment comes sooner than expected. Captain Swett arrives at his aircraft at 0700 for the pre-flight inspection. McCarthy watches from 30 yards away, pretending to work on another plane's landing gear. His heart hammers against his ribs. Swett walks around the Corsair, running through his checklist. He checks the propeller, the landing gear, the control surfaces. Everything appears normal. McCarthy allows himself to breathe. Then Swett climbs onto the wing to inspect the gun ports. He stops, kneels down, runs his hand along the access panel that McCarthy reinstalled just 3 hours ago. Something's different. Maybe a scratch in the paint. Maybe the panel sits slightly off. Maybe pilots just know their aircraft the way a man knows his own hands. Swett drops from the wing and walks directly toward McCarthy. "Sergeant." A word. McCarthy's stomach drops. He sets down his wrench and follows Swett away from the other mechanics, behind a fuel truck where they can't be overheard. "Did you work on my aircraft last night?" McCarthy considers lying, considers playing dumb. But Swett's eyes are sharp, and the evidence is already there in the gun mounts if anyone looks closely enough. "Yes, sir." "What did you do?" "I adjusted the gun convergence from 1,000 feet to 300. Swett's face goes from confusion to shock to rage in 3 seconds. "You what? Do you have any idea what you've done? That's unauthorized modification of military equipment." "That's a court-martial offense, McCarthy. They'll put you in Leavenworth for this." McCarthy stands at attention, hands behind his back, feeling the weight of the decision crushing down on him. "I know, sir. You know? Then why the hell would you do it? Because pilots are dying, sir. Because the guns don't hit at combat range. Because I've watched the footage and done the math and I know why we're losing, and no one will listen to a sergeant who loads bullets." Swett takes a step closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You think you're smarter than the engineers at Chance Vought. You think your high school education beats their degrees." "No, sir, but I think I'm right." The words hang between them. Around the airfield, other pilots are arriving. Other aircraft are being prepped. The mission briefing starts in 15 minutes. Swett looks back at his Corsair, then at McCarthy. "If those guns jam, if the wing structure fails, if anything goes wrong up there, you're done. Finished. And I'll personally testify against you." "I understand, sir. And if I refuse to fly this aircraft, if I report this right now, then tomorrow someone else dies because bullets spray too wide. Maybe Lieutenant Andrews, maybe Captain Morrison, maybe you, sir." Swett's jaw clenches. He's silent for a long moment, the weight of command pressing down on both of them in different ways. "How certain are you this works?" 90%, sir. Maybe 95. And the other 5%? McCarthy meets his eyes directly. "The other 5% and we both go to prison." Swett laughs, but there's no humor in it. He looks at the sky, at his aircraft, at the other pilots gathering for briefing. "You're either the bravest man I've ever met, or the stupidest." "Could be both, sir." Swett starts walking back toward his Corsair, then stops. "If this works, McCarthy, you'll have saved lives. If it doesn't, I'll make sure your court-martial is quick." He climbs into his cockpit, strapping in for a mission that will either prove McCarthy right or destroy them both. McCarthy can't watch the takeoff. He stands in the maintenance tent, hands gripping the edge of the workbench, listening to the Corsairs roar down the runway one by one. Captain Swett's engine note is distinct, slightly rougher than the others. McCarthy has heard it 100 times. Today it sounds like a death sentence waiting to be carried out. The mission is a bomber escort to Rabaul. Japanese Zeros always intercept near the target. Always, which means in approximately 90 minutes, Swett will either validate McCarthy's calculations or die trying. Diva and Santos hover nearby, pretending to work, but fooling no one. The three of them move through the morning like ghosts, waiting for news that will either vindicate or condemn them. The radio room crackles with combat chatter at 0940. McCarthy shouldn't be there, but no one stops him. The radio operator, a kid named Phillips, is too focused on the transmissions to care about protocol. Bandits, 2 o'clock high, 6 zeros inbound. The voice is Swett's. McCarthy's hands ball into fists. This is it. 300 feet. 16 degrees. All his calculations compressed into the next 60 seconds. Engaging. The radio erupts with noise. Engines screaming, pilots shouting coordinates, the staccato rhythm of machine guns firing. McCarthy can't breathe, can't think, just listens. Then Swett's voice cuts through, sharp and clear. Splash one. He's going down. Phillips looks up, surprised. Fighters usually report ammunition expenditure in hundreds of rounds per kill. But there's no time for questions because Swett is already engaging another target. Rolling in on number 2. More gunfire. Shorter burst this time. Splash 2. Phillips grabs his logbook, writing rapidly. 2 kills in under a minute. That's unusual. That's exceptional. 3 more coming in low. Morrison, break right. McCarthy leans against the radio table, his legs weak. The guns are working. They're actually working. But the mission isn't over. Structural failure could still happen. A gun could still tear loose under sustained fire. Swett's voice comes back, breathing hard. Got another one. 3 confirmed, and I've still got ammo. The radio operator stares at his equipment like it's malfunctioning. 3 kills with ammunition remaining is almost unheard of. Corsair pilots typically burn through everything for 1 or 2 victories. Engaging number 4. McCarthy counts the seconds. 5, 10, 15. Scratch 4. Jesus Christ, these guns are actually hitting. Other pilots chime in now, reporting their own engagements. Normal kill ratios, hundreds of rounds expended. But Swett keeps calling out targets, keeps dropping zeros with efficiency that shouldn't be possible. 5 confirmed. I'm Winchester on guns. Phillips does the math quickly, checking his notes. 5 kills. Swett's Corsair carries 2,400 rounds total across 6 guns. He's fired everything, but 5 confirmed kills means less than 500 rounds per aircraft. That's impossible. The numbers don't work. Except they do. The formation returns at 1100 hours. McCarthy stands on the tarmac with half the base, watching the Corsairs approach. Swett's aircraft is among them, all control surfaces intact, both wings still attached. The landing is perfect. Swett taxis to his revetment and shuts down the engine. Before the propeller stops spinning, he's out of the cockpit, helmet off, walking straight toward McCarthy. His expression is unreadable. The entire maintenance crew falls silent. This is the moment, either vindication or condemnation. Swett stops 3 feet from McCarthy, looks him dead in the eye, then extends his hand. 5 kills, McCarthy. 5 confirmed with less than 200 rounds each. I put my crosshairs on them, and they died. No spray, no wasted ammo. Just pure concentrated hell. Other pilots gather around, demanding to know what happened. How did Swett suddenly become an ace in a single mission? What changed? Swett points at McCarthy. He changed everything. The celebration starts before McCarthy can process what's happening. Pilots surround him, shaking his hand, slapping his back, demanding he modify their aircraft immediately. Captain Morrison wants his Corsair done tonight. Lieutenant Andrews offers to buy McCarthy a month's worth of drinks. The maintenance area transforms into chaos, but Lieutenant Colonel Millington isn't celebrating. He arrives at the flight line within the hour, face rigid, clutching a regulation manual like a weapon. Behind him walks the base engineering officer and 2 military police, Sergeant McCarthy. You will come with me. Now, the celebration dies. Pilots step back, suddenly remembering that unauthorized modifications carry consequences regardless of results. Swett moves to intervene, but Millington cuts him off with a glare. This is not a discussion, Captain. Sergeant McCarthy has violated direct orders and modified military equipment without authorization. The fact that it worked is irrelevant to the charges. McCarthy follows Millington to the command tent, MPs flanking him like he's already convicted. Inside, the engineering officer spreads technical drawings across the table, comparing factory specifications to McCarthy's modifications. You had no authority to do this. None. Do you understand the chain of command exists for a reason? Equipment specifications are set by trained engineers, not mechanics with delusions of competence. McCarthy stands at attention, saying nothing. There's nothing to say. He broke the rules are clear. But Millington hesitates. McCarthy can see the calculation happening behind his eyes. 5 confirmed kills in one mission, the best single sortie performance by VMF 2113 in 2 months. Results that can't be ignored even if they came through illegal means. You could have killed Captain Swett. If your calculations were wrong, if the structural integrity failed, you would have murdered an American officer through your arrogance. Or I saved his life, sir. And maybe I'll save more if you let me modify the other aircraft. The engineering officer slams his hand on the table. Absolutely not. We don't know the long-term effects, the wing stress, the mount degradation, the barrel wear. One successful mission doesn't prove anything. 5 kills with less than 1,000 total rounds proves the convergence works, and sir. Millington stares at him for a long moment. Outside, pilots are gathering, their voices carrying through the tent walls. They want their guns modified. They want McCarthy's innovation. They want to survive. The lieutenant colonel makes his decision. You will modify every operational Corsair in this squadron to the new specifications, under supervision, with proper documentation, and if a single aircraft experiences structural failure, you will face immediate court-martial. Understood. McCarthy allows himself to breathe. Understood, sir. That evening, while Diva and Santos help him work on the squadron's remaining aircraft, Captain Swett finds McCarthy in the hangar. He hands him a beer, stolen from the officer's mess. You didn't do this for recognition, did you? No, sir. I did it because it needed doing. Swett nods, understanding something that doesn't need words. They won't give you a medal, McCarthy. They'll probably never officially acknowledge what you did, but every pilot who comes home because their guns actually hit, they'll know. We'll all know. McCarthy looks at the Corsairs lined up in the hangar, each one waiting for modification, waiting to become the weapon it was always meant to be. That's enough, sir. The work continues through the night. 3 men adjusting angles, reinforcing mounts, changing the mathematics of survival. Above them, stars shine over the Pacific. Below, mechanics turn theory into reality. And somewhere in the darkness, the war continues. But for VMF 213, the odds just changed. Because one sergeant refused to accept that knowing your place meant watching men die.